My name's Scott Hastings, and I'm the former president of Select Engineering. Select Engineering was focused on engineering consulting in the natural gas processing, gathering, treating, and compression field. About 30 years ago, I stopped by and was looking for a business opportunity, and John presented several things to me, but none of them were right at the time. Since then, I had looked at both selling to numerous buyers, and none of those worked out, but often I was in conversation with John about, what do I need to watch my toes on? And John and I had maintained a relationship probably over that 20-year period that I owned Select Engineering. But when the opportunity came up to sell my company to a construction company, I wanted John as my consultant because I knew he was objective, he had my best interests in mind, and I could trust him to help me through the process in areas that I was unfamiliar. I think, it's hard to put a dollar figure on the mistakes you don't make, but there are definitely mistakes I didn't make by dealing with John and the team that he brought to the table, which included lawyers and accountants that were on my side. And I think that avoided anything that would have scarred the deal, quite frankly. So there were a lot of things that I didn't know going into it. The people that John recommended from a legal standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, and just from a transactional standpoint, kept me out of trouble. There were two factors that really helped, one of which was your objectivity. When it comes to selling a business that you created, that you've nurtured over 20 years, you've been through ups and downs with it, there are a lot of things that you take personally. And the objectivity of having John involved was one of the things that kept me from overreacting or underreacting to parts of the negotiation. So a huge part of the negotiation is really just figuring out where you are emotionally. And from that standpoint, having an intermediary to say to the buyer that's unacceptable kind of took me one step back to where it was said in a way of that's unacceptable, but let's move forward. So that was one huge contribution. Something that I realize now really helped was that John told a lot of war stories. And the war stories really took the situation that I was in and gave it a context of it could be a lot worse and it could go a lot better, and this is fairly normal for the transaction. So, in fact, some of the things that I thought were big deals got turned into, this is really not a very big deal. This is just something to deal with along the way. So the war stories helped and helped me realize that where I was riding an emotional roller coaster, there were a lot of things that are fairly normal and standard for the business, for the sale or purchase of a business. There were several times when I wanted to do things that would have detracted from the value of the sale, or they wanted to do things that would have detracted from the value of the sale. And the advice I got from John was very, very helpful in putting a stop to that and making sure that we were continuing to proceed in a professional negotiation to make the most of the value of the acquisition. And so when I finally signed the paperwork, I really had no doubts that we had gotten the most that we could out of the business. And this included a lot of auxiliary things that I wouldn't have thought of. Often what you focus on is the price you're getting for the business. But a lot of the little details, the terms of the employment agreement, the way that the debt is handled, the way that taxes are handled, are things that aren't primary but are very important in the transaction. As I said before, it's hard to put a price on the mistakes you don't make and the value that's brought to the table. It is an investment to bring an outside party in like Blue Stem, but the reality is I had no regrets writing the check. I think Blue Stem and John made it look like it was a very easy, simple, straightforward process, and that's where the value comes from. When you write that check, you go, that's a lot of money for what was a really simple process. And that's kind of the key to it. It really was a simple process. When it got right down to it, we closed very quickly. It was about a 7-week from letter of intent to close through all due diligence. The value received was good, and it was more than what I'd anticipated because of some of the auxiliary items that I talked about: low taxes, good employment agreement, and a lot of things that just, I think if you don't have a third party who can be objective when you're being emotional, you're going to have problems in the purchase or sale of business. And I think that just having that objectivity, having that experience, having that expertise pays off in so many ways. There is no doubt that I would use IBG Bluestem again in any acquisition or sale of a business.